Many enter the market armed with optimism, believing that every dip is a buying opportunity, and every setback is merely temporary. This natural human tendency to hope, while commendable in building a business or pursuing a life goal, proves catastrophic when faced with an unfavorable market movement. Livermore, through his own painful experiences of immense gains and crushing bankruptcies, learned that the market holds no regard for a speculator's aspirations or wishes. It moves according to its own immutable laws of supply and demand, indifferent to the personal hopes clinging to a losing position. Subscribe now, leave a like, and write any comment. This way, you'll help more people see and hear this message, and I'll know that my work is not in vain. The illusion that a losing trade will magically reverse, simply because one hopes it will, blinds the trader to objective reality. It prevents the cold, hard assessment necessary to admit error and cut losses swiftly. This psychological phenomenon ensures that the majority of market participants, even those with sound initial analyses, ultimately succumb to their own emotional vulnerabilities, holding on to positions that relentlessly move against them, all in the desperate pursuit of being right. Livermore understood that the market is a mirror, reflecting collective human behavior. When hope dominates over logic, it leads to paralysis and irrational decisions. The speculator who allows hope to dictate their actions transforms a carefully considered venture into a reckless gamble, continuously chasing a phantom reversal that rarely materializes. This powerful emotional attachment to a failing trade ensures that what began as a small, acceptable risk escalates into an unsustainable burden. Therefore, for anyone serious about surviving and thriving in the speculative world, recognizing and ruthlessly eradicating the influence of hope on losing trades is paramount. It is the crucial first step towards safeguarding one's capital and establishing the psychological discipline necessary for long-term success. Understanding this treacherous pitfall is not merely a theoretical exercise, it is a vital lesson, often paid for with millions, that underpins all prudent market action. The psychological dynamics of hope are profoundly dangerous when a trade begins to move against a speculator. Instead of engaging in objective analysis and making a rational decision, the mind, influenced by hope, instinctively seeks justifications for holding on to a losing position. This initial flicker of optimism transforms into a blinding force, preventing the trader from seeing the grim reality unfolding before them. Livermore recognized that this internal bias is where the genesis of most significant losses lies. When a trade goes awry, the natural human impulse is to avoid acknowledging a mistake. Hope whispers that the market is merely testing the position, that a rebound is imminent, or that external news will soon reverse the unfavorable trend. This magical thinking allows the speculator to ignore the mounting evidence that their initial thesis was incorrect. Instead of accepting the small, predefined loss, they cling to the belief that perseverance alone will ultimately lead to a recovery, or even a profit. This pervasive hope directly interferes with the critical act of admitting error. For many, accepting a loss is a blow to their ego, a painful acknowledgement of fallibility. Hope offers a comforting alternative, the illusion of being right, even if only eventually. This emotional attachment to being correct prevents the swift and decisive action required to close a losing trade, transforming what should have been a negligible setback into a rapidly escalating drain on capital. Livermore observed that hope often leads speculators to disregard their own meticulously planned rules. A preset stop-loss, a vital safeguard, might be moved or simply ignored, all in the desperate expectation that the market will turn. This abandonment of discipline, driven by the desire to avoid immediate pain and hold on to a fleeting possibility of recovery, is a profound act of self-sabotage that consistently undermines long-term profitability. Therefore, the psychological trap of hope is the primary culprit in the transformation of minor errors into major losses. It clouds judgment, fosters irrational behavior, and directly undermines the discipline necessary for effective speculation. Understanding how this insidious emotion manifests and taking immediate, decisive action to counteract its influence is the critical first step in protecting one's capital and preventing the psychological bias from dictating financial ruin. Once hope takes root in a losing trade, it invariably leads to a dangerous escalation of losses, primarily through two destructive behaviors: the fatal practice of averaging down and the perilous habit of ignoring stop-losses. Livermore, who learned these lessons at immense personal cost, emphatically warned against these pitfalls, recognizing them as the most common pathways to complete financial ruin for speculators. Averaging down is the insidious trap where a trader, hoping for a rebound, buys more shares of a stock or commodity that has already moved against their initial position. The rationale, driven by hope, is to lower the average purchase price, making it easier to break even or profit if the market eventually recovers. However, Livermore unequivocally condemned this practice, stating, "Never average losses, average profits." He understood that adding to a losing position is a desperate act, doubling down on a flawed initial judgment, and transforming a manageable error into a potentially catastrophic one. Subscribe now, leave a like, and write any comment. This way, you'll help more people see and hear this message, and I'll know that my work is not in vain. In tandem with averaging down, hope compels traders to ignore or move their preset stop losses. A stop loss is a vital defensive mechanism, a predetermined price at which a losing trade is exited to prevent further capital erosion. Hope whispers, just a little further, it will turn around, prompting the trader to override this crucial safeguard. Each point the market moves past the initial stop loss amplifies the mental pain and strengthens the hope for a reversal, making it even harder to finally admit defeat. This abandonment of discipline transforms a calculated risk into an uncontrolled gamble. These behaviors, fueled by hope, are profoundly irrational in the context of speculation. They replace objective risk management with wishful thinking, and disciplined planning with emotional reaction. The speculator, driven by the desire to avoid acknowledging a small loss, unwittingly commits more capital to a failing venture, chasing a recovery that statistically rarely comes, and digging themselves into an increasingly deep financial hole. Therefore, the escalation of losses is a direct consequence of allowing hope to override rational judgment and disciplined rules. The temptations of averaging down and ignoring stop losses are powerful, but they are financial suicide for the speculator. Livermore's hard-won wisdom dictates that to protect your capital, you must ruthlessly cut losses as soon as your initial thesis is invalidated, before hope transforms a minor error into a devastating and irreversible financial setback. A fundamental and often painfully learned lesson in speculation is the absolute indifference of the market to a trader's personal hopes, fears, or opinions. The market, in its purest form, forgives not and holds no regard for individual aspirations. Jesse Livermore frequently emphasized that the market is never wrong and that it doesn't trade on emotions. This stark reality shatters the common human tendency to project an illusion of control onto an unpredictable entity, particularly when hope is involved. Many speculators, clinging to hope for a reversal in a losing trade, operate under the dangerous illusion that they can somehow control the market by sheer willpower or by simply waiting long enough. They believe that if they just hold on, their patience will eventually be rewarded, and the market will turn in their favor. This belief is a profound misjudgment of the market's nature. The market is not a benevolent entity responsive to wishes. It is a relentless force driven by the cold, hard realities of supply and demand, utterly devoid of empathy. Hope fosters a false sense of security, encouraging individuals to endure mounting losses under the premise that they can simply ride it out. They fail to understand that every decline reflects a fundamental shift in supply and demand dynamics, and that holding on to a losing position is betting against the very forces that are dictating price. This illusion of control, powered by hope, prevents the necessary rational assessment of the situation and prolongs the agony of a failing trade. Livermore's experience taught him that market prices reflect the collective actions of millions, not the individual desires of a single speculator. When a trade goes against you, it is the market's verdict, a clear signal that your initial assessment was incorrect. Attempting to argue with the market, to hold a position based on hope that contradicts the price action, is a futile and costly exercise. The market will simply continue its path, oblivious to your wishes, eventually overwhelming any capital committed to a losing cause. Therefore, the market's unforgiving nature delivers a brutal, yet essential, lesson. Shed the illusion of control fostered by hope. The market does not care about your hopes or fears. It only responds to the balance of buying and selling pressure. By understanding this profound indifference and submitting to the market's judgment, you can eliminate the destructive influence of hope, allowing you to react with objectivity and discipline, rather than being swept away by emotional biases that invariably lead to greater losses. The ultimate, and perhaps most valuable lesson extracted from the painful reality that most losses start with hope is the indispensable principle of cutting losses quickly. This is the cornerstone of Jesse Livermore's enduring philosophy, a rule forged in the crucible of his own devastating experiences and cemented by a profound understanding of human nature's pitfalls. It dictates that the immediate and ruthless acknowledgement of a mistake, followed by the swift closing of a losing trade, is the most powerful and protective action a speculator can take. For many, the act of cutting a loss is excruciating. It's a blow to the ego, a public admission of being wrong, and a tangible confirmation of financial setback. This psychological resistance, fueled by hope and pride, is precisely what Livermore fought against. He understood that a small loss, promptly accepted, is merely a tuition fee for staying in the game, an insurance premium that protects the larger capital. It prevents a minor error from escalating into a major, account-crippling disaster. Overcoming the psychological inertia that accompanies a losing trade requires an almost iron discipline, It means trusting your predetermined rules and stop-loss levels more than your emotions. When a trade moves against your initial thesis, it is the market's verdict. To ignore that verdict, to cling to hope, is to allow a rational, calculable risk to morph into an uncontrolled gamble, where potential losses become limitless. The disciplined speculator cuts their losses with the same cold, calculated efficiency that a surgeon excises a malignant growth. Livermore famously stated, "It is good to be a buyer or seller, but never a holder." This refers to holding a losing position. He learned that money tied up in a losing trade not only diminishes capital but also ties up valuable mental and emotional energy that could be better spent seeking new, profitable opportunities. The ability to swiftly exit a losing position frees both capital and mind, allowing for objective reevaluation and renewed focus. Therefore, the most profound lesson learned from the destructive power of hope is the absolute necessity of cutting losses quickly. This is the ultimate act of self-mastery and speculation, demanding that you prioritize the preservation of capital over the fleeting desire to be right. A true master of the market is not one who never makes a mistake, but one who never allows hope to transform a small, acceptable loss into a large, devastating one, ensuring long-term survival and prosperity. Subscribe now, leave a like, and write any comment. This way, you'll help more people see and hear this message, and I'll know that my work is not in vain.